Okay.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining to another session of Global Technopolitics Forum staff meeting or research team meeting on March 21st, 2021. So let's start the day with Leo. Is Leo here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
hi,
Leo.
everyone.
Hi.
Happy Sunday. So yeah, for this week, I was continuing my research on 5G and went more on selecting possible case studies for countries to look at on how they're going for 5G development. So I looked at a very interesting and succinct article on 5G development in Southeast Asia. And this is to complement Echo's work, where she's looking at 5G development in Chile. So this article looked at kind of an overview of 5G vendor selection among different telecom providers in mostly the ASEAN region. And it found that, interestingly, that most Southeast Asian countries are open to working with Huawei and working with Chinese telecommunications providers, and with the exclusion of Vietnam. But that being said, because of security concerns being kind of espoused by the U.S., it has prompted Southeast Asian countries to want to diversify their vendors, but by no means ban Huawei or any Chinese providers outright. So I looked at a bunch of different countries in more depth, including Singapore, Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines. And it also created two interesting graphics. One of them was a graphic kind of showing the preferred 5G developers around Southeast Asia, kind of a survey mapping perceptions of different 5G developers. And it showed that Chinese developers are, on the whole, have a positive perception in Southeast Asia, despite kind of their reputation that's been kind of hammered on about by the US. And it's interesting to note that most Southeast Asian countries are open to working with Huawei and to working with China. And it seems like, in terms of case studies, I might go more in depth in studying the case of the Philippines. One, because I was born in the Philippines, I find that very interesting. But two, because the Philippines has a long-standing, alliance with the U.S. But despite that, they've decided to partner, or their biggest telecommunications provider, Globe, has decided to partner with Huawei to have Huawei build 80% of their 5G infrastructure, with the remaining 20% hoping to be from Nokia and Ericsson, but I don't think they've gone with that yet. But so that would be interesting, one, because I think it presents an interesting case in that they're kind of, one, going with a Chinese provider despite their alliance with the US, and also with disputes over the South China Sea. It's kind of a surprising decision to me. But two, it showed an interesting way of a 5G ecosystem can be built with multiple providers. So that's kind of what I've done so far.
Do you know what is the reason for that? Is it just financial sort of incentives, or are there other reasons for choices they make?
My instinct right now is financial reasons. It seems to be the case that a lot of countries are just being realistic about it and saying Huawei's research and development is way beyond any other provider right now, and that's the reason they should go with them.
Greg?
Well, I was struck too by the openness to cooperating with China, but also by the diversity of routes the countries are taking. It'd be nice to compare the Philippines with Vietnam, with Singapore. Quite different routes, it seems to me, which is interesting. Not surprising, I suppose, but interesting.
Yeah, actually, I forgot to say too that I think a nuance before is that what a country as a whole is, how they're approaching 5G and how they're approaching vendor selection is not entirely predictive of what the actual telecommunications providers will end up choosing. So I have to be mindful of the decision making here. Who's actually making decisions, the country's government or the actual providers?
It's also interesting to note that China and Vietnam have a long and ugly history of cyber, China has an ugly history of cyber intrusion on Vietnam. And I think Vietnam has actually returned the favor to a few places. So that might be, if you're following up on Greg's question of comparison and Pari's question of why, that might make a very interesting juxtaposition to look at to see if perchance the publicity surrounding Chinese cyber espionage and cyber sabotage against Vietnam may have played in, because obviously, as we know, in the Western world, we deeply, part of the reason we're so against Huawei, and one of the propaganda pieces we use, which is of course 100% true, if they build it, they have the greater potential to manipulate and exploit it for their own security purposes. So it will be very interesting to see in the Vietnam case, and if they're not choosing Huawei, if you could find any link between that and the security situation. I will dig up, there is it's either a FireEye or a CrowdStrike. It's one of the big cybersecurity firms. Maybe Dan, you or Kai might have come across it, on a Chinese advanced persistent threat activity in Vietnam. And so that might be a basis for you to also just ask a question.
Definitely, yeah. And I also saw in the article, I would think too, for Vietnam, it's cybersecurity issues, but also it said in this article that a lot of it was just due to disputes over the South China Sea as well. Vietnam just wanted to stay consistent with that stance.
Mm-hmm. And ECHO also uploaded a project, I think a report. Did you see ECHO's report?
Yeah, I just kind of skimmed it. It's continuing her Chile case study. I think one of the biggest takeaways, at least just from reading it very fast, is that 5G growth in Chile is going to be very slow. It says by 2024, only there'll be about only 10% of the population subscribed to 5G, if I'm reading that correct. But I have to read into it more. Yeah.
Greg, any comment on ECHO's paper?
This is becoming along, but I thought it was interesting, and I think it was exactly right that it's not clear how fast at all 5G will be taken in Chile. And nor is it clear how many people actually need 5G.
Any other comments, or shall we move to next topic?
Let's move on. Thank you.
You're welcome. So next, Daniel Simon, would you like to talk about your paper? I didn't see much changes, but I don't know, maybe I missed some changes. Daniel?
Yeah, so essentially most of the changes have been done by Kai recently, so he's finishing up the regulations portion. We've done no references, and we've been cleaning up kind of the language, so just like wording. But this would probably be better for Kai to talk at this point, because he's added the majority of the new work to this document recently.
Kai?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So one of the biggest problems that Professor Gideon has outlined was that there was kind of a lack of comprehensive sources when it came to the various initiatives that have been proposed by administrations, and kind of having a comprehensive overview of all of them. And so that's been the biggest thing that I've been working on, is just to make sure that, all of the literature is at least referenced. So even if it's not, like an in-depth of every single presidential decision, it's at least, referenced, and the reader can understand what it is. So I've gone ahead and done that through the Obama administration, and started to do that with the Trump administration as well. Obviously, the Biden administration hasn't been in for that long, so I'm not sure how much I'm going to include on the Biden administration, but I have been doing some research on it as well. And then I think at this point, it's really more about just trying to, clean everything up, like Dan was saying, make it very coherent, and I think probably subcategorize a bit more, because there's just so much stuff to write about for each one, that I think, for people who aren't as well versed in it, if it's in, more segmented segments where it's like, this is on the presidential decision, these are on the norms, and this is on the actual legislation that's been passed, maybe separating those out would make it even easier to read. But I think as far as information, we're pretty close to done.
Great. Greg?
I'm not sure I've actually seen the latest one, so let me try and catch up. Sounds like you're getting close.
Maura?
I haven't read it yet. I haven't read anything, and I don't know how much I'll read this week, but certainly on the Biden administration, you will want to include in the passage of the National Defense Authorization Act, the changes that have been made in the obviously getting a national cyber czar who comes from NSA cyber division, which has been pushing private public sharing. She has been personally pushing that for some time. So having her in charge, I think, will be important. And then for the Biden administration, you'll want to add the CMMC. Jennifer, correct me if I'm right or wrong on that. That's the certification that is now in place that came into, it's the regulations that I think came into, whatever you call it, I'm sorry, I'm having a muzzy word where it goes into effect, sorry, at the beginning of the year, where companies in the defense industrial base now have to get certified as to their cybersecurity posture, which is
yes, yeah, you're correct.
Thank you, Jennifer. I couldn't remember, you've written about it and we've talked about it, but that is the US government regulatory requirement that, again, it's not law, but if you want to do business in having a contractual relationship with the US government in the security sector, which is huge business, this is a certification model, which they're now being required to meet if they want to get certain levels of contracts. And this is certainly a model, Kai, that you'll want to at least mention, because it's one of those, it ain't law, but if you want to do business, you gotta step up to the plate. And it's a way to incentivize companies to do what we may not otherwise be able to mandate.
Definitely.
So,
It's also,
So Nick-
it's also a useful model, which you can imagine expanding beyond the DIB, the Defense Industrial Base.
so next, Jennifer, would you like to talk about your work?
Yeah, so I looked into an article that Greg sent my way about the European response to misinformation, especially about 5G and COVID vaccination processes, and the kind of way that the human mind believes misinformation, and why, in terms of like social dynamics, it's gone off so much in recent years. And on top of that, I've begun to prep my presentation for April 8th. Really doing some background research into the recent Microsoft hack, because I hadn't been doing any of that, but me and you, Kari, decided that it would make a lot more sense to do a dual presentation on both recent hackings that are just focusing on SolarWinds. So that's where I've been this week, is kind of collecting as much information as possible on the Microsoft hack and relating it to the SolarWinds.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Yep. James, would you like to talk about your work?
Yeah,
Just really jump. I finally got around to reading the Nick paper on the 2020 election interference. It's actually pretty good. It's got quite a lot of detail in it. It's sort of interesting for what didn't happen as well as what did. If people haven't seen it, it's certainly worth reading. It's a quick and easy read.
Okay. I'll look at it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Would you post that for us somewhere, Greg? Because I was looking for it and in my muzziness couldn't manage to pull it up on the internet. So if you have a link to it, if you would do that, thank you. And
Where's best? Should I put it on?
Why don't you send it to team, or if you have access, I think you have access to Slack, don't you?
Yeah, I should, yeah.
There is a general channel. If you put it on general, that would be very helpful.
Okay.
Thanks. Thanks. And James, would you like to talk about your work?
yeah. So I've been writing the proposal now, and I'd say I'm about halfway through. I have the overarching, like I have the language written out. I just have to go in and I've highlighted the different different sections for the evidence and citations and whatnot. So there's those sections that I still need to fill in, but the document should be visible and you guys can kind of see the progress I've made on it.
Mm-hmm. And are you comfortable with a presentation? Do you have all the documents you need? I send you links and accesses. Do you have all those?
Yes, I saw the links in the PDF. I was going to make like a Canva presentation, and I'm happy presenting my work by the 8th. And I'll just, I'll work hard and I'll pull this off by the deadline.
All right.
Well, you've got most of it, I think, anyway, so that'd be great.
Yeah.
And there was a recent high-profile spat with Bank of America over cryptocurrency, and they wrote very negatively, and then I'm sorry, once again, I don't have my notes in front of me, but then there was another guy who's very pro cryptocurrency who wrote very positively. I'm sure you've seen that, James.
Yeah, they funded a research study into it. And particularly what was yes and no was they funded the research into Delphi, which is decentralized finance. And one of the reasons they're so negative is they recognize that if decentralized finance ultimately is successful, that it would put the modern banking system completely out of business. So there's no wonder that they're going to be negative there. However, within that report, they also recognize the value of NFTs, non-fungible tokens, and the value in tokenizing assets, private equity, things of that nature. And that's actually an avenue that the big banks could move towards. However, yes, I saw the report, and they are fairly hostile to decentralized finance. As you're looking at the electric car over the gas car. It's gonna, if it's done well and executed well, which is a big deal, it has the potential to kind of outdate the big banking system. And so obviously there's going to be some hostility there.
Mm-hmm.
But very
interesting. Okay. Any comments? Then we move to Daniel. Daniel Whale, do you want to talk about your work?
Yeah, so Carmen and I think we're still reading around the new proposal. I see that our algorithmic compulsion one wasn't also successful, so we need to kind of pivot and rethink that. We will also meet and discuss the presentation immediately after this call and have a more concrete proposal to you by email by the end of today. I also think it would be wise if I met with Maura and Carmen and we can talk about perhaps pivoting or streamlining our working process to be more aligned, because it does seem to be a bit disconnected from the forum at the moment. So I think that we could probably get a lot of feedback and constructive guidance there. So I'll be doing that within the next week, as also reaching out. I think that's most of it from my side. I don't know if there are any other additions.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. So I saw that in the email you sent. Have you submitted our topic as algorithmic decision making?
I did, but we could change it. It's not concrete, so we could change it if you guys want.
Okay, perfect. Because we're going to discuss sort of narrow our topic in a meeting after this. So we'll get back to you immediately on that.
Sure, sure. So next,
where do we go next with the algorithmic work?
I beg your pardon?
We're next with the algorithmic work.
Well, we submitted a proposal which was rejected. So now I think they have to rethink that what kind of path they're going to take, whether they're going to focus on culture, whether they're going to focus, because there was a concept also for predictive algorithmic, for conflict. So maybe that, or I don't know. Daniel, do you have something to add?
Yeah, no, we're working on that. And then also there'll be a formal invitation that will come out to Pari and Greg from the foundation about contributing to those machine learning, algorithmic, technical and organizational solutions.
Yes,
and then we can follow up with that
sure.
About also trying to collaborate more there. But yeah, I think Pari's right. We're kind of pivoting and just finding our feet, and we've kind of dropped the ball a bit, so we need to step up.
Just let me know whenever you need to have a meeting, whenever you want to. We will be happy. Yeah.
No, but we've dropped the ball, so we'll pick it up.
Sure.
And Carmen? I was just wondering, have you reached out to McGovern? Because that is still an option for sending in another proposal. We can rethink the algorithmic culture proposal and make it fit with their values as a foundation. And I think that's still an option open for us too.
Yeah, I haven't approached them because I wanted to have a more concrete proposal. I feel that conflict or military kind of concept is better suited to them. But let me revisit that and come back to you on that one.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So next, who hasn't spoken? Because I know Doina is not here. Joy is not gonna join.
Megan
So-
is here. Megan is
Oh,
here.
okay,
Hi.
yeah, Megan. Hi, Megan.
Hey.
Hi. So with my report that I did, not this week, but last week, I kind of found someone who had modeled democracy with technology to see the interaction between the two. And he found that it was a U shape where there was a turning point where democracy and the internet kind of reacted in a positive way together to increase both internet penetration and democracy. And then he went on in the report to say that in Africa, particularly, that there are policy implications which are stopping this kind of turning point from occurring. So I was kind of thinking about looking at policies in Africa and the SSA region to see how these might be affecting internet penetration, and then therefore how they have an effect on democracy. But it's been a bit hard trying to find policy for so many countries. So that's why I haven't actually put out a report for this week, because there's nothing really concrete. I haven't really gone through all of them to see if there's a trend yet. I've also found one other report to say that that digital disruption in the next 10 years might hurt democracy. So I was thinking of also possibly looking at the policies, seeing how they affect democracy, how they affect the internet, and how that might be projected in the next 10 years. Yeah, so that's essentially what I'm going to try and get done this week. Hopefully I can get through all those countries. But there is also one problem. I haven't heard from Combate. I have no idea whether he thinks this is a good approach, whether he wants me to take a different direction. It's kind of hard to say. I'm a little bit in the dark. I'm just kind of going on my own at the minute, just because I haven't had any contact with him. But yeah.
Okay, I'm actually going to contact him to see why he hasn't been participating. Maura, any comments?
I've been thinking about this again. I haven't, read or participated with anything in the last 10 days. But I think, Megan, you're doing such interesting work that should he be non-responsive, we're going to be able to take your work forward, because you really have focused on the interplay between the technology and the democracy piece, which I think he had been a little less focused on the technology piece. What I would love to see, and I will try to, I'm not making any guarantees with anyone that I'll read everything this week, but certainly by the following week, I will have caught up. What I think, Megan, we have to do for you is we're going to have to narrow it down and choose a couple of countries to focus on where you have research that you found and where you've had meaningful statistics and background and studies that we can then, because you can't, 52 countries, we can't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right, so you've done enough basic research where I think what we'll want to do next, you keep looking at what you're looking, and then I would think within the next 2 weeks, we'll sort out Combate one way or another. Who knows with his dissertation and whatever he's doing. But then we'll just move forward and sort out what you're going to do if he's not in a place to provide guidance on where he wants to cooperate with it. And then we'll get you looking at, I would say, 2 to 6 countries max.
Yeah, I know there are a few that do have pretty good internet penetration. So you have like Nigeria, they're mainly in the western region of Africa. So I know that those ones might be good to look at, just because they're, you could say they're a little bit more Western in the sense of their development with technology. So it might be easier to kind of predict how democracy affects internet there, possibly, I don't know.
Well, I think what we'll need to do is go through your data and sort out and choose a variety of cases, maybe some that are more advanced and some that are less advanced, because even those who have a low level of internet penetration, as you have just pointed out from your research last week, it's the policy decisions that are also very important. And so pulling a couple of disparate examples might give us the best understanding as we move forward, but obviously you have to have sufficient data to work with. So we'll just have to line up everything you've done and see which countries do we have enough information to recommend that we move forward on, and how do they fit in the possibilities of different kinds of examples that they represent. Just as we spoke for Leo, and Philippines versus Vietnam, they're different, so maybe we learn different lessons.
Yeah, that might be interesting, like doing a comparison between the different countries. Yeah, I think that's great.
Mm-hmm. Greg, any comments?
Just to follow what Mara said, I think having a variety of countries by penetration rates, but also by, as I recall, Ethiopia was kind of the outlier in the number of times that it actually cut off the internet.
Yeah.
Interesting to have a range of countries in terms of what they've done too.
Is Darius here?
No.
Okay. In this case, I think Anna hasn't spoken.
Pari, James is going to make a comment on something, Megan.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So Megan, I also want to possibly bring to your attention that there is also a rather large cryptocurrency movement within Africa, as it is providing a more means for traditional banking services to people that might have a smartphone. So one of the ideals of cryptocurrency is also a level of democratic capitalism. And so cryptocurrency is allowing people to have access to financial services, banking, loans, and things like that through, say, their smartphone connection. I think you're seeing higher rates of adoption for cryptocurrency, and that might be something you want to maybe just take a look at, because it is growing within Africa, because Africa has a large population that is unbanked, and cryptocurrency is enabling that population to enter the financial markets.
Yeah, that's actually interesting that you said that, because actually when I was looking at the shutdowns, that was a major area that some of the African countries kind of restricted access was mobile banking, which, that might be actually something to look at. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so my 2 cents was, I think it's actually more mobile banking than crypto currencies, and it's mainly because the telecommunications infrastructure is more widespread throughout the continent than traditional, well, I guess, internet, right? Which allows it to be more prolific, I guess.
Any other comments? No? Okay, I think then, Anna, first of all, I'm sorry that I haven't gone back to you, because I know you started last week and we haven't given you any projects. I was waiting for Mauro to come back because I didn't want you to start something and then not be able to continue. But since Mauro still is not ready, maybe we can choose something at least for the time being. Daniel, do you need Anna to work with you on as you guys are navigating your way in this new project?
Yeah, she can join us. That would be great. I don't know which Daniel you're referring to, but if it's this Daniel, that's fine. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, because I think if you're thinking about conflict and algorithmic, sort of predictions, maybe that's a new area. And Anna, are you interested in working on that?
I don't mind. That would be interesting to have a look at.
Okay, so maybe that's yeah, because I think you guys need somebody to work with you to navigate the way until you arrive to a proposal, because you need something quickly. So yeah, Anna, maybe you start there with them.
Yes, that's fine.
All right. Any other comments? No, then I thank you everybody for being with us. Have a wonderful week ahead. And yeah, we look forward to see you next week, and we will be in touch during the week. Have a wonderful week.
Have a great week. Have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.